Okay, in preparation for Chapter 7, we've done quite a bit of background study and some of history. You'll note that we didn't really do much history into the Roman Empire, but we'll discuss that after we've gotten into the chapter a little bit of Roman history, and but because it will definitely apply, because some of that is talked about in the chapter. But now let's get into the chapter a little bit, and we'll discuss some of those things as we go through the chapter, and we'll delve deeply into the chapter and go over it. Let's, as we've already read the chapter, let's hit the chapter and hit some of the high points of it, things which are easy to understand, and then we're going to go through it and start picking out some things that are a little more difficult and start dissecting it a little piece by piece and getting to the more difficult things. Okay. We already talked about chapter 1, the sum of the matters. We get into, I said chapter 1, verse 1. In verse 2, he talks about the four winds of heaven strove or beat upon the great sea. Okay, what are we basically seeing here at this point? What is happening here? What does the sea represent? Okay, the earth or humanity, basically. The sea of humanity. A lot of people think of the Mediterranean Sea. Out of the Mediterranean Sea, or the Great Sea, would be the sea of the Mediterranean Sea. But out of the area of the Mediterranean comes four great empires, okay? And the winds that beat upon it are the winds of change, or heaven's working upon it. Again, as we talked about on Sunday morning, that would be what? We talked about it on Sunday morning, and in my lesson on Sunday morning. What will we call that influence?
That word you talked about.
Yeah, God's providence. Okay, the winds that beat upon that great sea, the sea of humanity. Out of that sea of humanity, God's providence would rise up four great empires, basically. So out of that sea of humanity, certain things are going to happen. All right. So so God's providence are going to cause certain things to happen. All right, and He's going to work certain things. In verse 3, we see four great beasts come up out of it, and each of them are diverse. One is different from another. Now that's important for different things. Each of them had something to give or contribute to humanity in themselves, okay? And ultimately to the cause of salvation of man. All right? Because that's actually what we're all looking at. A lot of people forget that's what the ultimate aim of everything is, and that's what we're going to see at the end of this, is God's going to bring about His what? His kingdom. That's the whole book of Daniel in a nutshell. God's going to bring about His kingdom, which is the church of the New Testament. A lot of people miss that completely. But in Matthew, he tells us, Jesus tells us, the kingdom is the church and the church is the kingdom. On this rock I will build my church, and I give to you the keys of the what? Kingdom. He didn't change subjects. He's talking about the same subject. All right? The church is the kingdom. The kingdom is the church. All right. So God's going to bring about His church, the kingdom. All right, verse 4. The first was like what? Okay, the first was like. It was similar to a lion. It had some characteristics of a lion. And also had what attached to it. Wings of an eagle. Okay, I beheld until the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted off the earth. It was made to stand upright with the feet of a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Okay, if we look back to chapter 2, we saw 4 sections on that image, and now in chapter 7, we see 4 sections here. If we were to liken one to another, what kingdom would we be looking at? The Babylonian kingdom. All right, so if we were to look at the Babylonian kingdom, why would God use this likeness to represent the Babylonian kingdom? Okay, he was ruthless. He was powerful. One thing about a lion I find extremely interesting. I watch a lot of National Geographic and these programs about animals and things of this nature, a lot of documentaries and things of this nature. And the question that always comes up, who would win in a fight? A lion or a bear or a tiger or a bear or a lion and a tiger? Well, if you take the largest of the cats, a tiger, and you match it up with a lion is smaller in size. He doesn't have as much weight. Well, who do you would think would win in a fight? Well, most people would bet on the tiger, right? Because he's bigger. He can leap farther. He's, what is it? A Bengal tiger can get to be almost 800 pounds. And, most African lions can get no larger than 500, maybe 550 pounds, right? So he's significantly smaller. But when the two go to battle, who do you think wins? Almost every case, the lion wins. Because the lion never gives up. It's amazing. I've seen videos of it. You would think the tiger would always win. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's got the size on him. But time after time, the tiger comes up on the lion and he bats him around and he beats him around. Of course, the lion's mane helps him a lot because he can take a lot of punishment around his neck, which is the vital area, and that helps protect him. But eventually the tiger gets tired of the battle and he wants to run. But the lion won't give up. He chases that tiger down and he goes after him. He continues to go after him. And if the tiger can't get away, eventually that lion will beat him and kill him. I was surprised. The king of beasts. There's a reason why they call him the king of beasts. He's regal in a certain for a certain reason. He protects his pride. He protects those individuals around him. He will fight to the death when he is challenged. So here the lion is depicted. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was fierce. He protected his people. He fought fiercely. And he had wings on his back. He quickly came to power. He conquered a great deal of area, didn't he? But it wasn't long that he quit conquering, wasn't it? And so the idea of his swiftness and his ability to conquer a large area, his wings were torn off. And he didn't conquer anymore. And he's made to stand upright like a man. And a man's heart was given to him. So the Babylonian Empire no longer conquered and destroyed and subdued large areas anymore. So whether you look at Nebuchadnezzar as the man, or if you look at the kingdom as a whole, now they become much more subdued in the latter part of the empire. And they were much more docile and kind, as it were. And so this likeness of a lion that is now made to stand upright like a man, and a heart given to it, is a good likeness. And his wings be torn off because it's no longer swift. All right? Now the second beast is that of a bear. What do we know about a bear? Okay, it's a powerful beast. But with all of its power, it's kind of slow and cumbersome, isn't it? It can run quickly for short bursts, but other than that, it's really kind of a slow and cumbersome and lumbering kind of an animal. But powerful. You don't want to get within its reaches. It is said that the train of Xerxes, the largest, his train or his mobile force was over 1 million men. That's an awesome sight. When all these men were marching, and between the horses and the feet of the individual, it said the sky was black with all the dust. That's an awesome power. But it's lumbering. It's not quick. It's not agile. All right, but it's an awesome force.
We don't typically think of it as a beast that preys like we would a lion or even a leopard. Typically, a bear will attack when it's provoked or when someone accidentally stumbles upon it. It doesn't actually go out necessarily to prey like a lion would.
Okay.
It's a scavenger.
More of a scavenger, yeah. Okay.
It'll eat whatever's in its way.
All right, and we see that here. It had 3 ribs in its mouth, and then it's told to go out and devour much flesh. So it goes out and eats. You know, a bear goes out and eats. That's what a bear does. It eats. It eats anything it can. It's getting it ready, putting on fat for the winter. That's what they do. You know, they'll eat anything they can eat. And so the Medo-Persian Empire, that's what, you know, they spread itself out slowly but surely. They very cumbersome in doing it. It wasn't fast, but slowly but surely they just spread tentacles out farther and farther and farther. But nobody rose up against the Persian Empire. Now, some fought back against the Persian Empire, such as Greece, but nobody really rose up against them. Okay, it was raised up on one side. Remember, we talked about it was truly an empire of the Medes and the Persians. So here's a bear that has one arm that's actually stronger than the other. The Medes were important, but eventually the Persians were more important than the Medes. And so you've got this individual that exercises one arm all the time. If you see these guys exercising all the time, if they only exercise one arm, what happens? Well, they get all bulky on one side. Or if they injure one arm and they can only exercise one arm. I've seen people like that. I've seen individuals that get injured and one side atrophies. And so, you know, they'll have one big leg and one leg that is rather small by comparison. And so that's what we see about this bear. He's all raised up on one side because one side's bigger than the other. One side's more important in the empire than the other. Okay. All right, number 6. I behold a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So he had 4 wings, but it's not regal like the first animal. It just has 4 wings of a bird. So what does that indicate?
It was fast, but not very long-lasting, or less.
It was extremely fast, but it didn't have the regal qualities of the first empire, is what I'm trying to indicate to you. The first one called the eagle was eagle's wings, but this one had 4 wings. It was extremely fast. Well, how did that fit with what we see about Alexander, what we talked about Alexander the Great? In just a few years, did he just kind of slowly move across the earth? No, he flew across the earth, didn't he? Even in with today's technologies of, airplanes and jeeps and tanks and all this type of stuff, even in World War I and World War II with all the technology we had, did we move that fast? And these men marched with sandals and did war. He went 10,000 miles in just a few short years. He went fast and conquered the then known world. He flew across the earth, 4 wings of a bird. Okay. All right, but this animal had 4 heads. Well, Alexander didn't last long, did he? And as we talked about, it wasn't long after Alexander's death that his empire was split 4 ways, wasn't it? And those 4 heads, just like, if you ever seen these mutations out on a farm or things of this nature, you get an animal with 2 heads. Not only do they not live very long, but they have a hard time figuring out what they're going to do, right? Some of them can't stand. Some of them, they can't make up their mind which way they're going to go because they've got 2 heads. And such was the Greek Empire at that stage, right? They were fighting one against the other. Right? So this animal had 4 heads. But dominion was given to it. The Greek Empire was powerful. Alexander the Great was himself powerful. And those individuals that lasted after Alexander the Great lasted for a long time. And the Greek Empire and the influence of the Greek Empire lasted for a long time, even down to today. So a certain amount of dominion lasted a long time. The Greek thinking and the idea of logic came from the Greek Empire. And it affected what we see particularly in the New Testament, and especially what would happen when writing the New Testament. Koine Greek. A very accurate language, and probably more importantly, a dead language. Why is a dead language particularly important? It did not evolve. Whatever it meant then is what it means today. When we read those letters and find those letters, the words did not mutate. They did not change. The English language constantly changes. People make changes in words. Words mean something different now than what they meant 50 years ago, particularly different than what it meant 100 years ago. We pick up the King's English from 200 years ago, most of us can't even read it. Because the English language mutates. It changes with time. But Koine Greek died shortly thereafter, was no longer used, And therefore, they started using the Latin language, and because of Rome. And so those books, we can use all of the letters that circulated throughout those periods of time of history, and we can know for a certain what each and every word meant, and it was a very, very accurate language. That's just one, and probably the most important thing about the Greek language, the Greek culture at that point in time. All right, verse 7, I saw in the night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay, in Daniel chapter 2, again, the terminology of iron is used, that of great strength, right? And if anything about Rome was strength. Rome ruled with an iron fist. You did not rise up against Rome. They were crushed. Any rebellions against Rome, once they came in, they ruled, and you did not rise up against them. And our Jewish friends in Jerusalem would find that out in a very emphatic way. But because of the great strength, what did that also cause? Peace. Safety. There's more safety in travel than there ever had been in any other kingdom before. They had roads. They built a road system. People could travel about the kingdom, the Roman Empire, like they had never been able to travel before. So those Christians, when they were persecuted in Jerusalem, did what? They went everywhere doing what? Went everywhere preaching the word. So it was right for the gospel to spread from Jerusalem, just like the prophets prophesied. So Rome unwittingly set the tone for peace, for a time for the gospel to be spread. And even though there was a certain amount of persecution, the persecution actually assisted in spreading the gospel throughout the kingdom. And it was God's great providence that caused that to happen. He foresaw it, and he used those kingdoms and those times and those circumstances to accomplish his good purpose. Okay, we're going to skip over the horns for just a minute, but we're going to come back to them. Verse 12, he considered the beast, and their dominion were taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Now, each of the beasts were alive for a period of time. What does that indicate to you?
They died.
Well, yeah, they eventually died, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Okay, they were in control. But God used them and used the qualities of each kingdom to accomplish his purpose. See, that's what the indication of the verse is trying to tell us. He prolonged them for a season and a time. So there was something that God used out of each one of them Each one of them contributed something to the cause of bringing about the kingdom, bringing about the Christ, bringing about the gospel. Okay? Each of them contributed something. And he used them for that purpose. They may have been evil, they may have been pagan, they may have been whatever. However, he used whatever he needed from them in order to accomplish that end. So that should give us great hope in times of darkness and weakness, shouldn't it? No matter how dark the times, no matter how much persecution we feel, no matter what we think we're going through that we just absolutely can't stand, God can use it for good, whatever it is. You and I may not understand it. You and I may not ever see it in our finite mind. But God can use it for good. Isn't that what Romans 8:28 tells us? There's no reason for us to ever lose hope. Others before us have been persecuted horribly. There's no reason for us to turn into little cupcakes like we're seeing today. There's no excuse for it. Okay? All right, here's the purpose for all of it. Verse 13, I saw in the night visions, behold, one like unto the Son of Man, came into the kingdom of heaven, and came into the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. All right, so one like unto the Son of Man. Oh, don't you love that terminology? One like unto the Son of Man? Don't you love that terminology? Who is this? This is Jesus in prophecy. He's brought into the Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days? God the Father. He's always been on his throne. There's always been the throne. Okay? Verse 14, and there was given unto him dominion and glory and a what? What's all of Daniel all about? The kingdom. Okay, so the Son of Man is going to be given a kingdom, and that all people, nations, languages should serve him, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, in his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So again, what is this message all about? It's a message of hope. Even though it seems dark, even though we see a kingdom coming out, that kingdom that comes out that looks dreadful, and that seems to be stamping everything underneath its feet, our message is one of hope. If we look to that which is spiritual, we always see what? God on his throne. We always see hope for the future. Because God is in control, ultimately. Now see, in verse 15, Daniel is what? Grieved in his spirit. We never like to see God's people hurt. We never like to see those things when God's people or the church or anyone suffering. We don't like to see that. We don't like to see Terry go through difficult times. We don't like to see anyone go through difficult times, do we? It hurts us. It brings us pain. So when Daniel is given a vision that shows that God's people at some point or another is going to suffer, how do you think the prophet takes that? It grieves him. Any man of God is going to say that. He's going to be grieved in his spirit. But it's necessary, isn't it? for the accomplishment of good of all mankind, it's necessary. Sometimes grief and pain is good for all of us. It helps us to grow.
I have a question. It may be off topic, but I'm thinking of it, so if it's off topic, just tell me. Speaking of a weepy prophet, this reminds me of Jeremiah 5, verse 6, where he references a lion and a leopard when he's telling about what's going to happen to the Jews. Is that's not the same kingdoms he's referring to? Is that are those different symbols? Or I just thought it was curious because he said the lion's going to come out of the forest and slay them. A leopard's going to watch over their cities, and I thought, well, that's very similar to what we're reading here. And I just thought about just now. Is that a different prophecy or?
Actually, I'm not that familiar with chapter 5. I would have to look at it more deeply. In fact, Ezekiel is one of the prophets I need to spend more time in.
Jeremiah.
Excuse me, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Well, and Ezekiel too, as far as that matter.
5 and 6, and it's, I guess, about the same time. But,
Correct. They are all prophesying pretty close to the same time.
So I just thought that was interesting because as you were talking about that, I thought that.
There are so many similarities in all of them that can't be a coincidence, yes. That's an excellent question. I wish I could answer it for you.
Verse 14 is almost quoted in Isaiah.
Hmm.
All nations, the kingdom will be established, and all nations will flow to it. So,
Correct, and we're very familiar with that one, correct, which is a prophecy of the church. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, verse 16, he wants to know what's going on, and so he comes and asks one of them that stands by. So now, try to get a picture in your mind what is going on. We see the Ancient of Days sitting upon his throne. The Son of Man is brought to him by individuals, and so there's throngs of individuals around the Ancient of Days, and so Daniel, in his vision, walks up to one of these individuals, and he begins to talk to him and ask him some questions in his vision. And that's where we're going to actually have to stop, isn't it? And so in verse 16, he begins to make known to him the interpretation of the things he has just seen. So we will continue on in verse 17 next week. When I get back, what are you going to do, Brad?
I'll probably just do a topical study.
Okay. So when I get back, we'll start in verse 17, and somebody will probably have to remind me where I'm at. If I'm the same person, I may not know who I am after they irradiate me with whatever. So anyway, I appreciate everyone's kind attention.